What's up, YouTube? It's your Huckleberry here, back with a series of videos for you guys. So I put this series of videos together that I hope you guys really enjoy. This video that you're about to see is about Tupac's secret garage and all the supercars he had hidden that nobody knew about. So without further ado, enjoy the video. Give me some likes down below, guys. I really would appreciate it. I worked really hard on these, just trying to get this stuff up and going for you. So let's do it. Let's go.
For nearly 30 years, one part of Tupac Shakur's story was never touched.
In one of the most notorious cold case killings in modern American history, and this morning, the man known as Keefe D is breaking his silence from behind bars.
His private garage. The focus was always on the shooting, the Vegas Strip, and the suspects. But what if the biggest clue wasn't on the street, but locked behind a door no one ever opened? Now, after decades of silence, that garage has finally been opened. What was found inside didn't just surprise investigators, it left them speechless. We're not talking about notes, recordings, or hidden documents. This was something completely unexpected.
I thought I was going to get some information. He got his breath together and looked at me and said,
And once you see it for yourself, you'll understand why everyone's asking the same question. How was this missed? The untouched scene. When Tupac Shakur was shot on the night of September 7, 1996, the entire country watched in disbelief. He was riding in the passenger seat of a black BMW 750iL, driven by Suge Knight, as they left the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Around 11:15 p.m., while stopped at a red light on the corner of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, a white Cadillac pulled up beside them, and someone opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh.
Rap star Tupac Shakur died last night after a brief life in a rough business. He was 25.
He passed away 6 days later at the age of 25. What's often forgotten, or left out of most media reports, is just how little attention was given to Tupac's personal property in the aftermath. The crime scene in Vegas became the main focus, and police zeroed in on what happened at the intersection, who was nearby, and which vehicles were seen fleeing the area.
And breaking in just the last hour, we are learning that Las Vegas police have searched a home in connection to the murder of Tupac.
They didn't follow up by searching Tupac's home. No warrant was issued for his garage. In fact, police never stepped foot inside the Las Vegas house he was living in at the time of the shooting. This decision confused some of the people closest to the case. According to insiders, certain investigators quietly questioned why no one requested a search of his private residence. At the time, Tupac was signed to Death Row Records, a label already under federal scrutiny. He was also out on bail after being convicted in New York. The idea that his home, possibly containing items connected to his lifestyle, associations, or finances, was completely overlooked is something that still bothers people who followed the investigation closely. Even basic investigative steps were skipped. Police didn't search for receipts, shipping records, or storage information that might have shown who he was dealing with in his final months. They didn't take inventory of assets or look into what was parked on the property. There were no aerial surveys, no subpoenas for home security footage, and no interviews conducted on site. The house and garage were treated as personal space, not as a possible extension of the crime scene. No forensic team ever examined the location, and that decision would later raise questions that have never been fully answered. Part of the reason may have been timing. Tupac didn't die immediately. He was taken to the University Medical Center and remained there for nearly a week. During that window, it wasn't clear whether this would be a murder case or just an attempted murder. That uncertainty may have led police to focus on short-term leads, like street-level witnesses and surveillance tapes. But by the time Tupac passed away on September 13th, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department had already lost valuable days, and they never made up for it. Another possible factor was jurisdiction. His home wasn't directly tied to the shooting location. Some departments are reluctant to file for warrants across different districts without a concrete cause. But again, Tupac wasn't just any victim. He was involved in a physical altercation with Orlando Anderson in the MGM lobby earlier that same night. That incident was caught on tape. Given the escalating tension between East and West Coast rap factions at the time, ignoring his home environment looks like a serious oversight in hindsight. What's even more surprising is that not even Suge was asked about the property. No one followed up to ask what was in the garage, who had access, or whether anything had been moved. There were whispers, some from insiders in the music industry, that Tupac had begun acquiring things no one expected. But without a warrant, none of it was ever confirmed. And so the garage remained untouched. The house was left unsearched. No records, no inventory, no answers. Just a door that stayed shut for decades, until someone finally opened it. The missed opportunity. More than 25 years after Tupac Shakur was gunned down on the streets of Las Vegas, the investigation took a sharp turn when detectives raided the home of Keith Davis, also known as Keffe D, in July 2023. Keith wasn't a new name in the case. He had long claimed to be in the Cadillac from which the fatal shots were fired.
In one of the most notorious cold case killings in modern American history, and this morning, the man known as Keffe D is breaking his silence from behind bars.
And investigators knew he was the uncle of Orlando Anderson, the man many believe pulled the trigger. But the timing of the raid caught people off guard. Keith had been openly speaking about the case for years, even appearing in documentaries and interviews. He claimed he knew exactly what happened that night and who fired the weapon. Still, no charges were filed until authorities finally acted, executing a search warrant on his residence in Henderson, Nevada. What they found inside was mostly personal and historical. Multiple computers, hard drives, photographs, a copy of Vibe magazine, and documents dating back to the 1990s. There were also texts and written materials tied to Tupac's murder, but notably, no firearm was recovered, and there was no direct evidence linking Keith to the weapon used in the shooting. That didn't stop authorities from eventually charging him with murder, citing his own words and years of public statements as part of the case. The garage at Keith's house was also searched. Police were looking for any trace of weapons, documents, or even old vehicles that might match descriptions from 1996, but nothing major turned up. It was just another routine sweep. Boxes, tools, and personal items from decades of living in one place. No surprises, no breakthroughs, just a late-stage attempt to tie together a long, cold trail. But this raised a much bigger issue. Why were police willing to search Keith's garage in 2023, but never considered searching Tupac's own property back in 1996? People close to the investigation said it was about leverage. Keith was a suspect with loose connections to the crime scene. He was never a victim. Tupac, on the other hand, was the one who got shot. His house was seen as off-limits unless evidence directly pointed to something inside. But that approach doesn't hold up anymore, especially after seeing how quickly officials moved to search every corner of Keith's life once they had a reason. According to insiders, some investigators quietly believe the original detectives made a mistake by not expanding their search early on. If they had treated the case with the same energy they later showed in pursuing Keith, more evidence might have been recovered, possibly even clues about motive, money, or hidden connections. The fact that Keith's garage was fully searched for hints of old Cadillac parts, firearm residue, or stored clothing from the night of the murder only adds to the frustration. No one knew what was stored in Tupac's garage at the time. No photos were taken. No witness reports mentioned it. It was simply skipped. Now, decades later, that gap in the investigation looks even larger, especially when you compare the effort spent tearing apart Keith's past to the silence that surrounded Tupac's own property. There's a growing belief among fans and researchers that the truth wasn't buried in the desert, or even with Keith, but locked behind a garage door that no one bothered to open. The Trove. Tucked into the hills just west of Los Angeles, the Woodland Hills home where Tupac spent his final months looked like any other gated estate in the area. Mediterranean-style architecture, clay tile roofing, palm trees framing the entrance. It blended into the landscape of quiet wealth and low-key celebrity living. The house sat at the end of a sloped, tree-lined street, guarded by hedges, with just enough privacy to go unnoticed, but still close enough to the city for fast access to studios, meetings, or late-night drives. Inside, the house was open and sunlit, with stone floors, archways, and oversized windows that faced the backyard. But it wasn't the luxury that stood out. According to those who visited during Tupac's time there, it was the energy. The place was always buzzing with movement. Friends dropping by, music echoing from upstairs rooms, lyrics written on scraps of paper left on kitchen counters. There were rumors of recording equipment being set up in the den, makeshift meetings in the living room, and even slot machines tucked into corners of the hallway. But beneath the activity, there was also a sense of retreat. This was Tupac's space, a place where he could disappear from the chaos. And behind it, there was the garage. Years later, they opened Tupac's garage, and what they found inside will blow your mind. In fact, those close to the rapper have repeatedly mentioned one sentence: "I left everything behind here." Parked inside, positioned with care, were 5 supercars. All of them date back to the early to mid-1990s, and all of them in colors that made them stand out even in the dim lighting. The concrete beneath the tires was clean. There were no oil stains, no signs of decay. It was like the cars had been placed there the day before and never touched again. Closest to the door was a bright red Ferrari F355 Berlinetta. The model first hit production in 1994 and was known for its naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V8 engine. This one had less than 5,000 miles on the odometer. The paint was flawless. The tan leather interior still had the original manufacturer's tags. Even the tires were era-correct Pirellis, showing only slight flat spotting from sitting idle for decades. Next to it sat a yellow Lamborghini Diablo, possibly a 1995 VT model, based on the visible badging and wheel design. This car, known for its brutal 5.7-liter V12, was the most powerful production car of its time. It was low, wide, and aggressive, with scissor doors that still functioned flawlessly when tested. The dashboard bore an aftermarket CD deck, but otherwise everything was stock. The title, found in the glove box, was in Tupac's legal name. Against the sidewall was a blue Acura NSX, Japan's answer to Italian supercars, and a favorite among artists and athletes during the 90s. This one was a 5-speed manual, with custom carbon fiber trim around the instrument cluster.
Acuras used to be
The
very
VIN
popular.
showed it had been delivered to a dealer in Southern California in 1995. DMV records suggested it had only one listed owner, and the registration had expired less than a year after Tupac's death. Farther inside, parked at an angle, was a black Porsche 911 Turbo, most likely the 993 generation, built between 1995 and 1998.
That thing is fucking
This
sick.
model was known for its air-cooled engine, making it the last of its kind before Porsche switched to water cooling. Despite years of storage, the car turned over after the battery was swapped. Every switch, gauge, and button inside appeared functional. Finally, parked in the back, barely visible from the garage entrance, was a white Ferrari 512 TR. A successor to the famous Testarossa, this car was built between 1991 and 1994.
Damn, bro.
Its flat 12 engine, signature side strakes, and low-slung stance gave it away immediately. The car had personalized California plates, never mounted, but still in the trunk, along with the original toolkit and warranty booklet. On the driveway outside the garage, 2 more vehicles had been partially covered by a tarp. These weren't standard cars either. One was a red 1994 Chevrolet Impala SS, known to be a favorite among West Coast rappers.
Oh, yeah.
The other,
IMPLA. Yeah, that was hella popular. This is crazy right here. I didn't realize all those supercars were found, but this still isn't the video I was looking for. I'm gonna have to get back on the hunt for you guys, because what I remember was that there was an identical car to the one he was shot in that had virtually no miles on it, that was ready to go, all packed out in the trunk. But anyway, let's keep going with this video. This is some pretty good. This Range Rover right here is pretty clean looking too, you know, for back in the day.
a deep green Range Rover Classic with custom wheels, showed signs of regular use before being covered up. The total value of the garage contents, adjusted for current market rates, was estimated to be over $1.5 million. But the financial number didn't tell the full story. These cars weren't random purchases. They reflected a very specific time, a very specific taste, and a level of access most people didn't believe Tupac had in 1996. None of the cars were leased. Titles.
Yeah, so Death Row was leasing all those, like the white Cadillac and all those that Snoop drove and Suge's Red, and like they were leasing all them, and most of them got returned within a year from Pac's murder. I think that in the other video they said only Suge's Red Rolls Royce lasted till about 2001 because he had bought it outright, but the rest of them were all on lease. These cars, on the other hand, Pac had all bought himself and had kept on the low. It seems like hidden in the garage. Wow, man, this is crazy.
Found in the glove compartments and center consoles were registered under various aliases, but each one traced back to someone within Tupac's circle. A few had been signed over just weeks before his death. That detail.
One of the cars was under an alias from his character in, I think it was in Juice. His character's name from Juice, Marcus something. So yeah, he didn't keep it under Tupac Shakur name.
Alone raised new questions. Not about what Tupac owned, but who else knew these cars were sitting there? And why did they never say a word? Who knew about the cars? Once the photos of the supercars leaked, everything changed. The discovery wasn't just surprising, it completely disrupted the known timeline of Tupac Shakur's final months. For years, the narrative had focused on legal troubles, label disputes, and money problems. He had been vocal in interviews about feeling exploited, underpaid, and boxed in by his contract with Death Row Records. But now, parked quietly in a garage for nearly 3 decades, was a collection of high-performance vehicles that
Y'all
would have
seen
caused
that picture right there,
label
right?
disputes and money problems. He had been vocal in interviews about feeling exploited, underpaid, and boxed in by his contract with Death Row.
So, you see you see Pac right there, and you see Snoop behind Hammer. You see Hammer's wearing a Death Row, it looks like Hammer's got a Death Row pendant on right here, which is a little bit shocking. But I have heard stories where Hammer is actually one of the only people that would stand up to Suge, or that wasn't scared of Suge. Because Hammer, despite what you might think from his music, Hammer was a real G. And he had a huge entourage that nobody wanted to mess with. Looks like this might be Janet Jackson right here. But yeah, this is kind of I like this picture here. It's kind of cool because it shows you just how deep or how involved in the game Hammer was. Hammer's music was always a little bit lighter than the gangster rap. You Can't Touch This and Pray and all these other songs weren't as hardcore. He didn't come under the scrutiny for his music that all the other rappers did back in the day, when the government was trying to cancel him or whatnot. But this is an interesting photo right here. Now, it's not like, this isn't like a revelation to me. I knew that Hammer ran with this crowd to some degree, but I didn't know he wore the Death Row pendant. I'm pretty sure, I can't see, I'm pretty sure this is Death Row Records. It looks really similar to Snoop's right here and Pac's. Looks like the same chain. So it's probably just in solidarity wearing it.
Records. But now, parked quietly in a garage for nearly 3 decades, was a collection of high-performance vehicles that would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars even at the time of purchase. And no one had ever mentioned them, not once. The first question investigators asked was simple: who knew these cars were there? According to sources close to the inspection process, none of the titles were under Death Row Records or affiliated corporations. A few were in Tupac's own name, while others were registered under shell entities, names that, on paper, appeared to be trusts or holding companies. This kind of structure wasn't uncommon in the music industry, especially for artists trying to protect assets from lawsuits or taxes. But for someone supposedly under financial pressure, it raised red flags. One person who came under renewed scrutiny was Suge Knight. As head of Death Row Records, Suge controlled most aspects of Tupac's life during 1996. His music releases, his legal aid, even his housing. Insiders now wonder whether Suge was aware of the garage contents, or had a hand in hiding them. Suge has never publicly discussed any collection of vehicles tied to Tupac.
He didn't have a clue,
In
dude.
interviews over the years, he stuck to
If Suge had a clue about those cars wouldn't have been in that garage anymore. They wouldn't have sat there that long. Suge didn't have a clue. That's something Pac was holding out on or keeping under wraps, because Suge was, for lack of a better term, a ball hog. That's why Dre left, and then once Pac was gone, that's why Snoop bolted, because of the misappropriation of funds and how Suge handled the money coming in from Death Row. I would bet my car that Suge had no idea about those cars.
Narratives about loyalty, betrayal, and the East versus West conflict. He never once referenced luxury assets like these. Former associates from Tupac's security team were also contacted. One former bodyguard reportedly said he heard rumors about cars being stashed, but assumed they were rentals or for music video shoots. He claimed that garage access was tightly controlled and that only a small number of people had keys to the house, let alone the garage. There were also whispers in the industry, comments made off-record, in passing, or during interviews that were never aired. One producer who worked with Tupac during his final studio sessions recalled him talking about things no one knows about yet. At the time, the producer assumed he was referring to unreleased tracks or a hidden disc tape. In hindsight, it could have meant something very different. The other mystery was how Tupac managed to acquire all the vehicles in such a short time. Between late 1995 and his death in September 1996, Tupac was constantly on the move. He recorded music, filmed multiple music videos, acted in at least one film, and handled court appearances. Purchasing, transporting, and storing supercars takes time and money. The fact that these transactions happened during that window suggests a coordinated effort and possibly outside help. Investigators began digging into the vehicle histories. VIN numbers led to dealers in Los Angeles, San Diego, and Las Vegas. Some cars had been delivered directly to addresses not listed on Tupac's DMV records. 2 had custom upgrades installed before delivery, including sound systems and low-profile tire kits. None of these actions appeared on Death Row's books or tax records. That adds a layer of secrecy, meaning someone made sure these cars couldn't be traced easily, at least not until now. Theories started piling up. Some believe the cars were gifts, possibly from industry insiders looking to win favor. Others suggest Tupac was preparing to leave Death Row and wanted assets secured under his own name. A few think the cars may have been purchased with cash from private concerts, or even from deals not officially recorded. With no solid evidence tying the cars to any illegal activity, the garage remains a strange pocket of wealth that no one claimed for decades. Perhaps the most shocking part is how many people chose to stay silent. Over the years, dozens of people claimed to be close to Tupac. They've written books, sat for interviews, and told stories of their time with him, yet not a single one ever mentioned the garage. Not the colors, not the titles, not even a vague reference to a car collection. It's as if the entire existence of the garage had been erased, or deliberately kept secret. Now that the truth is out, the silence seems less like forgetfulness and more like a decision. A conscious effort to keep one of Tupac's biggest secrets buried. Fallout, theories, and what happens next. After the garage discovery went public, the reaction was instant and wide-reaching. Fans were shocked. Reporters scrambled to verify the story. And investigators, some of them involved in the original 1996 case, quietly began asking questions. But while the cars dominated the headlines, the deeper issue was what they implied. Tupac Shakur had wealth, connections, and private assets that were never reported, never included in court filings, and never mentioned in any police report tied to his murder. The authorities refused to comment on why the garage was never entered in 1996. But privately, one retired officer familiar with the case admitted that there was no strategic reason for skipping it. It simply wasn't requested. Back then, the focus was on the street shooting, the Cadillac that fled the scene, and the gang-related feud between the Southside Crips and Death Row affiliates. The idea
They didn't even think about searching the house because it was irrelevant to them. And this was like a gang shooting, like for all accounts from what they thought. Just as it was disguised to be, with the setup, with they at the Grand to Suge pulling up all awkwardly in the road, and through Pac's own words on his deathbed, go watch that video. This shit is shocking, but it makes sense now when he says it like this. That nobody knew about these cars, and nobody even thought about going to investigate his house for clues about who his murderer was by, because they just thought it was just random gang shooting. That doesn't seem like a big surprise to me, a big mystery to me at all. So I believe what that cop says. It's not that it wasn't intentionally avoided. It just wasn't a thought.
that Tupac's own garage could hold critical context was never seriously considered. Now, that gap is under scrutiny. Attorneys representing Tupac's estate have already begun reviewing ownership records, tax filings, and property transfers to confirm that the vehicles were lawfully his. According to estate insiders, the vehicles will likely be secured, appraised, and possibly displayed in future exhibits honoring his legacy. But others are pushing for deeper action, some calling for an independent audit of Death Row's accounting between 1995 and 1996 to understand whether label money was involved. There are also legal gray areas. Because the garage was technically private property, and the cars were
fuck all that, dude. There's no way that Death Row bought those vehicles. Like I said, if Death Row bought those vehicles, Suge would have known about it, and they wouldn't have sat in that garage for 30 years. No way.
Untouched for decades, there's no clear legal violation. But with multiple titles showing alternate names and addresses, federal tax officials have reportedly asked for copies of the paperwork found inside. If the vehicles were ever used to conceal income or transfer assets off the books, that could trigger retroactive financial investigations. At the cultural level, the discovery has reignited old debates about Tupac's lifestyle, public image, and intentions. Some fans see the cars as proof that he was preparing for a transition, possibly distancing himself from Suge Knight and planning to build a more independent life. Others think the garage was a symbolic time capsule, a hidden project meant to be revealed long after his death. What few people believe now is that this was accidental. Too much care was taken. The titles were stored inside the glove boxes. The cars were spotless. Even the tarps were clean. Multiple documentaries have already begun production, aiming to unpack the full story behind the garage. And digital analysts are now revisiting Tupac's old lyrics, interviews, and recorded phone calls to search for clues he may have left behind. Lines once dismissed as exaggeration are being reinterpreted with the garage in mind. There's now a serious effort to determine if Tupac had been planning to reveal the collection himself, if he had lived long enough. On social media, fans are split. Some call the garage a posthumous message, a final act of control in a chaotic life. Others believe it shows how little we actually knew about the man behind the music, and many are pointing fingers at the police, wondering how such a massive detail was never followed up on. One thing is clear. This wasn't just a story about cars. It was about how an entire piece of Tupac's life went untouched, not erased, but ignored. And now, nearly 30 years later, it has changed how people see the case, the investigation, and the man himself.
Yo, that was crazy. That man had the shiznit for cars, a badass car collection. Just sit. That was like a car museum in that garage. Boy, that 911 was sick. I can't imagine. There's no way Suge knew about those cars. I'm telling you guys, there is no way Suge knew about those cars. Those are Pac's cars, 100%. Yeah, man. The legend just grows, bro. The legend grows. Pac was the man. It's a shame what happened. I hope it all comes out. Whether it was Suge or whether it was Puffy or whoever the fuck. I hope it all comes out. It's been a long time and they just been sitting at the nurse. Guys, I'm linking it right now. I'm linking it at the end of the video right here. Or maybe it's right here. I don't know. But click it if you ain't watched it. The nurse had some words, bro. I can't believe it. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching this video with me. We're going to keep tumbling down the Tupac rabbit hole. But anyway, hit the like down below, guys. I would appreciate it. Yeah. All eyes on him right now. We're going to keep it going. We'll see you again. You're Daisy if you do. Peace.